Hey everybody, it's Charlie from Daily Motor, and not only have I spent the last week with this Polestar 2 single motor rear wheel drive model, but I spent the week before that with the dual motor performance model Polestar 2. So I've had a lot of experience with Polestar's smallest sedan here, and I've welcomed that because it's been a few years since we reviewed the Polestar 2, and when we reviewed it back, I think it was 2020 or so. That was when Polestar was new on the market. The EV market looked totally different. And now the brand has matured. I think buyers have also matured. The market and the charging network have matured somewhat, although the charging network not as quickly as I'd like it to here in North America. But I really wanted to revisit this car and see where I could rank it, where I could recommend it, what appeals it has. And first things first, looking at it, the styling is certainly one of the appeals. Very nice white paint color on this one. The performance model we drove was more of a darker gray. I'll show you that one as well. Both look sharp. A nicely done sort of grille, even though it's mostly filled up because it doesn't need a whole lot of air intake here without an internal combustion motor in there. This rear-wheel drive one giving us some thicker sidewall. I believe these are 19-inch wheels. Yes, 19 inches, giving us a good amount of sidewall, and this one is still quite fun to drive. Now, the performance model was just that much better, and we've got a section talking about how well that one drives, but there have been aspects about this one that I actually prefer, having a little bit more sidewall, having a less performance-tuned suspension, but yet still being very nice to drive. I don't love their choice to use this plastic cladding down here from a styling aspect. I think the car would look that much lower and sleeker and more stylish with more body color around it. But overall, a handsome and functional smaller car. And that's important to note because a lot of people do appreciate smaller cars. So many EVs these days are coming in this kind of slopey, compact crossover hatchback size vehicles. But the Polestar 2 is refreshingly a sedan. We do still have a liftback design here, which allows you to get a good amount of things into the trunk. You can remove this privacy shield here, fold the seats all the way down, although not quite in a 40-20-40. We've got a 40-60 split fold with a center pass-through for skis or 2x4s or anything. Let me actually show you what it looks like to have everything folded here, which I can just barely do at 5'10". Reach those seats down and then push that out. Look at that. I think I could practically lay in there. That's a good amount of space. And I appreciate these too. A little bit of a holder right here for stuff in the back and a cargo net. And this flips up to allow for a little bit of a partition to keep things from sliding around as much. And you've got underfloor storage, a whole thing that lifts up there. You can put a charger, you can put some bags, an emergency kit. That is a lot of practicality, even with being a rear-wheel drive car, having all that space in there. Definitely well thought out. Also should note that you have some metal tie-down points. That's important for some people, and a 12-volt power outlet back here. Power that closed. Not a powered charge door opening. That's a little bit disappointing, but of course you do have level 3 charging up to 220 kilowatts. Get these seats back up. And getting into the back, there's not a ton of space. So if you're someone who's regularly putting rear-facing car seats or adults back here, you might want to consider going with a larger sedan, but comfort for an adult is doable, I'd say, for about an hour or so. My head just barely not hitting the ceiling, only if I really, really stretch and sit upright. 5'10", 32-inch inseam. We do have a flip-down armrest, so that's nice. I can kind of lean into the center. And it's a fairly upright seating position as well, so you can do it. But again, if it's something that you're regularly going to use, you might want to consider a little bit of a larger vehicle. But at least you do have heated seats back here in this Plus model. You've got 2 USB-C ports and air vents. That was something surprising. We were in the Sonata N-Line recently, didn't have rear air vents. That was disappointing for a car of that size. What a handsome interior, though. You've got this interesting mixture of, I guess these are technically cloth seats with maybe a little bit of a vinyl. How would I describe this? I'll have to look up, see what the window sticker says, because it's kind of a combo between a cloth. Maybe it's all cloth. I don't know. It's a really nice seating material, though. I really haven't minded it over the course of the week. And to be honest, a lot of the materials inside the cabin are pretty cool. You've got this cloth texture here. You've got a little bit of wood grain up there in the front as well, a dark wood grain. It's a fun use and mixture of materials, but unlike something like Cadillacs, where we've seen way too many materials inside and making it look really busy, it all comes together for a coherent package. Something I have not appreciated with my few weeks with the Polestars have been this glass roof. Yes, it's attractive. Yes, you can see things out of it, but you can't cover it. And when it's baking down sunlight right here in the middle of the day, I'm finding myself always having to drive around with a hat on to keep the sun on my eyes, and you can feel it heating up the cabin. I know it's tinted, but it's just not the same as having a proper cover. Before popping in, let's take a look under the hood. Show you that you do get some more storage. So here is where they have the Polestar repair kit for the tires, because there's no spare, and the charger, and a jack. So I don't really understand why there's a jack if there's no spare tire. That's kind of interesting. Just thought of that. But a lot of storage space for this size of vehicle. I appreciate that. Before we get too much further into the review, I should point out to you that we have some other coverage on the Polestar 2 as well. I've got a dedicated breakdown of the 13-speaker Harman Kardon system in this Plus model. Unfortunately, I don't have a review of the non-Harman Kardon system in this car, but the HK is quite good, so check the link below if you want to see that. And we've also got a dedicated range test that I ran last night. Performed pretty well at highway speeds, and I have a dedicated breakdown on the infotainment system here. It's an Android Automotive based system. It was actually the first Android Automotive system on the new car market, and it does have a learning curve, but once you get used to it, it works quite well. The screen's pretty responsive. I've had a little bit of lagginess at the startup sometimes with certain screens, but once everything's going, it responds really nicely, and you want to get logged into all of your Google apps, and when you do that, you have a pretty usable system. And it's very nice to be able to do things like navigate to the Bellagio in Las Vegas.
Okay, Bellagio Hotel and Casino. Here we go.
Tell me there's a car system that works easier than that on the market. There just isn't. And look, it even factors in the charging for me to say, I'm going to charge at the Baker EVgo station for 12 minutes. It's a super fast 350 kilowatt charger. And then after those 12 minutes, I'll make it to the Bellagio in Vegas, which is a 4-hour and 31-minute drive there, with 10% state of charge. And say, for example, I was like, well, 10%'s cutting a little close for me. I'd rather arrive there with 30%. Hit done. And it recalculates and says, all right, you're going to spend an extra 12 minutes at the charging station in Baker, 24 minutes, and then you'll make it to the Bellagio in 4 hours and 42 minutes with 30% state of charge. That is awesome. And if you're navigating somewhere a little closer, say for example this Nook coffee bar where I'm going to meet my buddy for coffee here in a few hours, it says I'm going to arrive there with 93% state of charge. I'm at 97 right now. So nice, so responsive, and this is a full-fledged Google Assistant, so I could even do things like, what's 280 divided by 16?
280 divided by 16 is 17.5.
Okay, and this will fully integrate with your Google system at home. So say for example you want to precondition the vehicle, it's cold outside, you can tell your Google Assistant, precondition my Polestar, it'll get the climate control running right from your Google Home speaker, and you can integrate it with Google Maps. So say for example I look up a navigation on my tablet at home or my computer or my phone and I save it, it'll be right here in the navigation when I had to leave. It's a very nicely integrated system. Throw it into gear, car comes on, and we are rolling. Another quick side note, unlike some other EVs on the market, very minimal slow car sound. Listen out here. It's probably the least, the quietest sound they could legally get away with for having that kind of whirring noise. You get into something like the new Hyundais or the Toyotas or even my wife's Chevy Bolt, and it's just kind of loud, the noises it has to make to alert people that you're driving around in an EV. Before we actually get going, I should show you all the Monroney or the window sticker. I've been trying to do that more often, so let's pull over here and pull that out. Here we are, Polestar 2 single motor plus, 299 horsepower, 220 kilowatts, 361 pound-feet of torque, 82 kilowatt-hour battery. I misspoke earlier, 205 kilowatt-hour fast charging max speed. Not too many options on this. Like I said, it's got the Plus pack, so we've got a heat pump, the panoramic roof. Oh, so that's cool. I wonder if you can just get this without the panel roof, though. That would be nice. The Harman Kardon premium sound, Weave Tech seats with black ash decoration. Weave Tech. Okay. I knew it was a synthetic material, but I just don't even consider the fact that it's not any sort of leather or fake leather. Digital key, that would be something nice if I owned this vehicle to be able to take advantage of. Power seats, backrest, heated seats, heated steering wheel, heated wiper nozzles. The grocery bag holder, like that. $1,250 for this paint, and the autopilot assist being $2,000. We'll talk about that a little bit. But the way you're looking at this on the window sticker, $57,000. However, pricing changes very regularly for these cars on Polestar's website. So I highly recommend, if you're interested in getting into one, check out their website. You might be able to pick one up from inventory for closer to $50,000. And that gets us into a little bit of a different bracket compared with that $57,000 price tag. What the Polestar 2 does really well is a good balance between a satisfying driving experience and an easy driving experience. The one-pedal driving, which is very customizable, you can see right here, even at nearly a full state of charge, is bringing me nicely to a stop, confidently and comfortably. And the accelerator calibration is very smooth, not jerky at all away from the line. I noticed when I drove my wife's Bolt earlier this week, I found myself kind of shaking the car, getting going and coming to a stop because the inputs were so much less refined. They were much more abrupt, and just found myself not having as much of a smooth experience as I was used to here in the Polestar. And like I said, there is a good amount of customization in that. You hit this car button and you get 3 levels of steering feel: light, standard, and firm. And with light, it is particularly light. Not quite Volvo levels or Rolls-Royce levels. Those are pretty much the lightest steering on the market, but still pretty darn light. And then one click, switch over to firm, and yeah, I mean, it really weights up. Now it feels heavy, and there's a noticeable difference between those. And then one pedal driving right here. They give you standard, low, and off. And with off, this car is having no sort of regen at all. It's not even like a gasoline car. It's just almost like it's in neutral. So if I really, really wanted to drive efficiently and not waste any sort of energy going away to heat in regen, I could do that, and then once I start, press the brake pedal, then it starts regenning for me. Or you could have low one-pedal driving, which makes it feel a little bit more like a gasoline car. It's slowing down a little bit, but not dramatically. And then I like having full one-pedal drive on, so I can just release my foot from the accelerator, and the car comes to a stop. Again, very comfortably and naturally there. And then it gives you the option to turn creep on or off, and that is the sensation when you come to a stop, release your foot from the brake. Does the car start rolling forward the way it would like a gasoline vehicle, or have that off? Again, most of these are just software decisions, so I really appreciate that Polestar gives us the option with those. There's so many electric vehicles I get in, like the Volkswagen ID4, where they don't have one pedal driving, and it's like, why not? Why not give us the option to choose to turn it on or off? Polestar is very smart in giving us that. Also, quick side note, moving around this infotainment system, look how big, chunky, and clear all of the buttons and controls are. Very easy to press, even while you're moving, defined regions. A lot of vehicles I get in these days, a lot of the new Toyotas, what was something else? Oh, the Hyundai, the Sonata N I was in. The contrast between the different elements of the screen was too subtle, so you couldn't quite see where different boxes started and ended, and some of the controls were very tight, and you had to really be precise with where you're adjusting. Everything in the screen, it's easy to reach, it's very clearly defined, and big, bold colors and differentiations. I've really appreciated that. Not only that, but look at this big gauge cluster screen we've got in front of us here. Yes, it's large, but it's not overwhelming me with information. I've got this map up right now, which is the same map that you see in the center. So if I've got navigation going, it's telling me my instructions right here in front. But if I press this button, then it shrinks, and it just gives me information I need. It gives me my speed in a digital readout, gives me the gear I'm in, speed limit, outside temperature, how much power, not in a specific kilowatt readout or anything, but just a little gauge of, am I using a lot of power or am I regenning power? And then my range and my state of charge. Very straightforward screen in front of me. Again, nice balance between usable and easy. Speaking again of usable and easy, going back to that Volkswagen ID4, the Polestar doesn't try to reinvent the wheel with any sort of crazy, oh, you should do something like have your turn signals be on the steering wheel, or we're going to save money by only giving you 2 window switches up and down. No, this is a straightforward car to drive, so much so that I would be totally fine with my mother or my wife just hopping in here, and even though they're not big car people, they'd be comfortable and confident to use the vehicle right away. most of the things you need to do regularly are kind of there at your fingertips and accessible, and I appreciate them for that. I will say this center area is not a very efficient use of space. The fact that we have this giant piece of piano black plastic, which is already getting scraped up with only 5,000 miles on the car, this huge chunk of space, and then this shifter, that's the only thing here. You couldn't have done something a little bit more creative with this center space area, given me more area to put phones or keys or wallets or sunglasses or drinks. It's a shame that this was not a little bit better thought out, but I do admit it looks good, so there is that. Right there you saw me accelerating from that stoplight, and this rear-wheel drive model has just that right amount of power where it's exciting and it's responsive. Not necessarily like the dual motor car that is straight up fast and very cool to toss around, but this car still feels exciting, and for daily driving it still allows me to feel like I'm getting that electric car experience, and I'm much quicker than most other people on the road without having to light up the tires or have any sort of kind of special drive equipment. Let's hop to a little bit of my footage spending time in that dual motor performance model. Here we are out driving in the dual motor version of the Polestar 2. This one, it reminds me how fun electric vehicles can be, because we've got a Chevy Bolt that we live with day to day, and there are quite a few electric vehicles that are they're powerful. Pretty much all EVs are decently peppy until you get down into the little stuff like the Kona electric and the Leaf, but this is properly powerful. Do something like come out here and then hit it. Oh, and it's going so strong. It's just fun. It's been a long time since I've driven a Polestar, and this one with the performance package, this one is just good. It's been satisfying to drive from a driving standpoint. And what's funny is I just got done with the Hyundai Sonata N-Line, and in that review I was kind of saying, yeah, I mean, it's kind of sporty, but it's not sporty enough to really justify the firmer ride and the dual clutch transmission. But this car, it feels so much sportier than that car, and yet it's not billed necessarily as a performance car. I mean, yeah, I guess it's kind of a performance-y version, but it's overall, just as a car, using it, it's quite good. Now, going over some of these expansion joints, you feel the road imperfections coming through in these tires. I'm hoping we see a little bit of improvement of that with the kind of more docile single motor car here in a few weeks. But until then, I have been appreciating having some performance. But again, this single motor car does do things better, such as have a smoother ride, and you can see coming away from this red light, if I hit it, it still pulls away strong. It's nice, it really is. But I do have to say it's a bit quieter in here as well than that dual motor car was. Oh, here's a perfect example. Okay, so I'm gonna need to get over into the right in order to take this highway on-ramp. But the left lane's totally clear. There are a ton of cars in this right lane. So I'm gonna be able to pull up to the stoplight. And I know that Mercedes E350 has no chance of keeping up with me. Already up to 60 miles per hour going up this hill. And we can toss it into this on-ramp. See how this rear-wheel drive car does. Ooh, state of California using a Silverado EV. Very interesting. Here we are, up at highway speeds. The Polestar 2 is louder than I'd want for a car at over $50,000. A good part of that is the solar roof, but also I think they just had to cut costs a little places here and there, and unfortunately sound deadening was probably one of those places. We do have a pilot assist functionality, a little active lane keeping action, and it does work pretty well. However, you do have to be very firm with how you're touching the steering wheel, and there are certainly situations where I am just resting my hand on the steering wheel and driving as though I would in any other sort of vehicle, and it doesn't quite recognize my hand being there, and it starts chirping at me saying, hey, you gotta have your hands on the wheel. My hands are on the wheel, what the heck? So that can get a little frustrating, and the adaptive cruise control, even at its largest following distance, or rather its closest following distance, is too conservative. It'll see a car kind of in front of me and really slow down. Not exactly how I normally want to drive. So far, I mean, it sounds like I'm absolutely in love with this car. Like, there's nothing wrong with it, right? Not particularly. I have been really satisfied with it, and I've enjoyed it. That being said, it is a bit more of a niche vehicle than I would like to admit. Part of that comes down to the price. Once you start getting about $50,000 here, there are a lot of options on the market. And I don't know, the Polestar does a lot of things well, but it doesn't really do anything above and beyond enough to scream at me that it's the best buy at this price point. It's still so fast, so I love that. I don't want to get too in the weeds on pricing simply because it does change so much and the competitors' prices change so much, but I do at least know at this time when I'm filming this, you can get a base Tesla Model 3 rear-wheel drive long-range model for about $4,000 or $5,000 less than this Polestar 2. Not this one we're driving, but more of a basic Polestar 2 long-range. And again, I haven't spent intimate time with the Model 3, but we owned a Model Y for a while. I've driven the refreshed Model 3. It's quirkier. What is that? Is that... Oh, that's the new Macan EV. No way. Nice. Okay. All right. For me, the real differentiator between this and the Model 3 comes down to the charging network. And I've said this in so many of my electric vehicle reviews. I truly do feel for the manufacturers of EVs that don't use Tesla's charging network, because Tesla still has such an advantage here in the North American marketplace. And I've been burned once, twice, 3 times with the non-Tesla charging network, whether that be Electrify America or EVgo or the Red network. It doesn't matter. I've had so many limited charging stations and opportunities and broken charging stations. And if I were going to buy an electric vehicle to use as my daily driver, as my primary vehicle, it would still probably have to be a Tesla. Now, I know that a lot of manufacturers are getting access to the Tesla supercharging network, and that really, really does help. But there's still an inherent ease in having the system baked into your car where you can simply set a route and know that you're going to hit a charging station with maybe 10 different charging stalls, and it'll tell you how many are open and how long it's going to take. So this is definitely a step in the right direction with the Android Automotive-based system, and where it tells you how long you need to charge and everything. Still much better than the Hyundai Ioniq 6's system, but still not as good as the Tesla. Now, if you're overseas, if you're not in the North American market, that might be a little bit of a different situation. But there are compelling reasons to pick this over the Model 3. It's a more unique car. It's a different sort of ownership experience. I do like the tech suite in this better than the Model 3. I like having a nice gauge cluster here in front of me. Sound system, I'm sure it's good in the Model 3 as well, but we haven't had a chance to test it, whereas this Harman Kardon, I can vouch for that it is quite good. And if you step up to that performance model, I mean, that is a properly good suspension and drivetrain, and there's a lot to be said for it. Now, the other weird thing with the pricing is that it does start to get you up around that luxury car. I mean, the BMW i4 sort of territory. The i4 does cost a little bit more, but I prefer spending extended periods of time in the i4. It's more luxurious, the materials are nicer, it's more comfortable. I prefer the tech suite here in the Polestar 2, but there's definitely a strong argument to be made for the BMW's platform and interior, and you got to remember the dealer network as well with the BMW. You can go and have an excellent dealership experience with a BMW i4, whereas the Polestar 2, you're going to have to find one of the few service centers or have them come pick it up or something like that. So definitely a compelling reason to go with something like the BMW. But I do like the Polestars. I do. I've enjoyed spending time in both of them. I like a lot about them. There's like I said, an ease and a comfort to them. Maybe missing a little bit of the wow factor for better or for worse. Some people are going to appreciate that. But before we wrap up the review, we got to put the Polestar 2 on the Daily Motor leaderboard. I'm going to do the Polestar 2 as an entire lineup since I did spend meaningful time in both of them. Polestar 2. Current leaders are Kia EV9, Hyundai Ioniq 6 SE, and Toyota Tacoma. How much does the Ioniq 6 SE cost? Okay, so the Ioniq 6 is a good bit less money, and you can get more range out of that rear-wheel drive SE model. The tech suite isn't nearly as good. It's not as nice to be in, but it is quiet. It does drive well. So yeah, I can see the compellingness of the Ioniq 6 still. LC500, Mazda 3, BMW X5, Toyota Crown, Toyota Prius. Okay, I know where this is going. Right here above the Toyota Prius, but below the Toyota Crown. Breaking up those two Toyotas right there. And I think it's just a little bit of the cost, and because of that, there's kind of this odd in-between with the Polestar 2, in that some of it is sort of like a luxury vehicle, and some of it is more like just a general kind of commonplace vehicle. So it doesn't get amazing marks from me in terms of being like, oh wow, this is such a great deal, and sort of stands out in its practicality, kind of like the Ioniq 6 SE. But on the other end of the spectrum, it doesn't wow me from a luxury car standpoint and kind of make a statement in that direction. It's still a little bit of this oddball, but for some people, having an oddball is exactly what they want. So thank you all so much for watching. If you do want to see more on the Polestar 2, check the link below. We've got more of those dedicated coverage videos, and we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from Daily Motor, and as always, drive on.